All right. There are still more attendees dropping in, but since we are already 2 minutes over, we'll start with today's FinDeWebinar. Welcome, everyone. This is the 6th FinDeWebinar we arranged this year. The concept of the FinDeWebinar we started or piloted 2 years ago, and the idea behind the seminar is that one or more than one of our member companies share their knowledge, their competence, their view with other member companies. So it's a way of peer-to-peer coaching between our members. We've had to this year already seminars ranging from labor law questions in Germany and Finland to negotiation skills and sales material to sustainable strategies for SMEs. And today we have a very interesting topic in marketing, automation, data-driven marketing, AI-driven marketing. And personally, I always feel that the best FinDe seminars are the ones that where we have a couple of our member companies joining forces and sharing their expertise and different views. And this is happening today. We have two of our companies, Sellforte and Dain Studios, contributing to the seminar. I'm sure we will have a very vivid set of presentations. There will be polls also during the session, which will appear on the right-hand side. There is a chat box also where you can ask your questions during the presentations. The chat box is also on your right-hand side. If you don't see it, please click on the small red rectangle with 3 white dots, and then the chat box will arrive or will appear. We will not use the speak function. It's grayed out, as you will see. So please ask your questions in the chat. We will come back to them during the day. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Chris from Sellforte. He will start his first presentation. Then we will move over to Dirk from Dain Studios, and then to Mikko again from Sellforte. So Chris, if you could activate your camera and microphone, and then we will start the presentation. Welcome.
Okay, welcome on my behalf as well. My name is Chris. I'm a marketing manager at Sellforte, and I've been working as a marketing manager for a couple of years now, and maybe one of the most profound themes I've seen within the industry or within the sector of marketing has been that many marketers aspire to be data-driven. They aspire to use data-driven marketing in the companies and wish to utilize more data in their decision-making, but struggle to do so for one reason or another. What I would like to do in this very beginning is to have a poll about what do you think is the biggest hurdle or challenge marketers face when they're actually trying to utilize data in optimizing, for example, ad performance and the marketing campaign performance in general as well. So you can see on the right side the poll just activated. I'd like to ask you to be fairly quick because we'll go through the answers in a couple of slides. But to maybe give you the broader context about this topic is that in 2019, Invoca surveyed 500 business-to-consumer marketers and tried to find what are maybe the data sources that the marketers trust, have access to, and actually implement in their day-to-day work. And the results were quite well surprising, because most marketers trust the sales data or the transaction data or the purchase history, which is actually the most reliable data source you can have, because it's the final outcome of your actions. But when we look at whether the marketers have actually access to this data, the kind of the numbers are starting to look more off, because only 62% had actually access to this data, which is perceived as the most reliable source of when you're doing this analytics and modeling processes. And even more surprisingly, when you implement these data sources in your modeling, and when you try to gain insights from the data, purchase history actually were used in only 38%, by only 38% of the marketers when trying to make more informed digital marketing decisions. Now, unfortunately, this data didn't include offline marketing, but you can see that the picture is kind of off. People trust too much maybe Google Analytics, the website data, which kind of seems like a silver bullet in this analytics side, but can have some very misleading findings if you don't look at the whole picture, which is the sales data or the purchase history. And in this same survey, the marketers answered the same questions as you've now answered. And here are here are the results. So the biggest hurdle when the answers were weighed between experts and up-and-comers were data quality. So not so much that the data, there's too much data, or the data is found in so many silos, but the data quality is so bad, and it's maybe inaccurate, it may be too high level to apply in the analysis, but that creates the biggest hurdle when doing these analysis. And when we look at how the replies or the answers vary from when you're going as a freshman towards the more seasoned marketer, you start to see that it's the kind of the newcomers that have problems with these data quality issues. So the data accuracy is not so good that not so well accustomed marketers can apply it in their analysis. And as time goes by, then the kind of the data amount becomes an issue. So we would need to find better ways to actually store the data, have it in the right format, have it available. And that's one of the key topics we're going to discuss today, especially from Dain Studios side. So you get clear insights how you can tackle these most profound challenges marketers have when they're trying to move towards more data-driven processes. Secondly, AI has been a hot topic. It has been maybe a bit as a cliche, but in the survey they found out that only 50% of the marketers are utilizing AI in kind of finding out where to allocate the budget, how to get better insights, and how to build more informed segments. So it's quite surprising how low it actually is when we know when there's scientific and when there's practical findings that the human labor is very much outpowered by the AI and by the computational power our modern day technology and tools and applications tend to have. So there's no reason, or at least from the statistical side, there's no point in trying to go with your gut feeling when you can have these big data tools that help you in these decisions. Now, that said, it is good that on the other hand, 50% are actually implementing these. But then the downside is that many of the AI solutions we see today are not that advanced. They're quite rudimentary. So Mikko will be talking today more about what are the more advanced AI solutions when you're doing marketing mix modeling or when you're analyzing your promotion effectiveness. So we will try to showcase you what AI can do to kind of understand the difference between the basic or the rudimentary algorithms and true powerful machine learning models. And why this topic should be especially relevant for each and every one of you is not that today's competitive landscape is really challenging. So Amazon, which was one of the kind of companies who actually benefit or thrived during the COVID-19, is using data to its fullest extent. And it's not anymore the smaller companies, but also the big brands that need to be more like Amazon to kind of fight back to this development. And although you wouldn't be a pure e-commerce player, you can apply data-driven mindset and data-driven marketing approach to your systems by utilizing your data you already have. So or you can be offline player as well to have a data-driven organizations. Now, at the same time, there's been really steep cuts with the marketing budgets during the coronavirus crisis, and you need, although there's some light at the end of the tunnel, it's still tough for the kind of get more budget. So you need to know where you invest your current money, and especially communicate to other functions and top management that this budget has been used as wise as possible. And lastly, although we expect to know pretty much how the world works, it's still unclear how the situation will develop, what tomorrow looks like, and who will be futures winners, because Google has used also a lot of data in their analysis, and they have recognized that some trends that we might think that are just temporary might outlast the coronavirus. And so you need to have your kind of antenna on the ground, and you need to constantly review how the consumers are responding, how they're behaving, and how the situation is moving, where it's moving, what you should do to tap into this potential. And so we've kind of built these three reasons why data-driven marketing is actually a must-have in today's competition. So the markets are opening up, as we see, and you need to be able to see where the growth happens. You need to constantly analyze where it's opening up, what kind of activities are tapping into this potential to actually be in the top companies group and not too slow to adapt to these changes. And as we saw, money is still very tight. So it's not only that you use it wisely, but marketing has had this proof gap existing for a while now. So you need to be able to close this proof gap. And the proof gap means that some of maybe the top management functions or executives are not maybe so sure about whether the marketing funds are used as efficiently and whether they're actually driving sales and profit. So you need to be able to show them with hard numbers that your marketing investments have produced this and this much money, and by investing this much more, you will probably reach this sales budget. And relating to the Google study, things are changing really fast. So it's no longer applicable to use these biannual marketing mix modeling projects because they take time. They're a bit outdated when they come out, and they cost a lot of money. So instead of these one-off projects, we should move to continuous analysis, and that's how you tackle the very dynamic environment challenges presented to us today. This it was quite similar challenges that the World Federation of Advertisers and the 2CV market research agency found in their survey of 700 leading marketers. So there's a need to be more with less, in which you need these kind of better analytic solutions, and you need to be able to calculate and measure the impact of your actions to actually show the value of your work. You need to be able to go from the creative work towards more technological aspects to kind of integrate the technology to your creative work to actually stay up to speed in today's competition. And you need to kind of see that the consumer expectations are ever expanding and ever increasing. So you need to be able to be better every day in your work to once again stay up to speed. That's from my end about the context, why this is especially, we think this is extremely relevant at the moment. So next up will be Dirk Hoffman from Dain Studios to talk about how you can design these data-driven marketing departments, which was one of the biggest problem. How do you get the decent data quality, and how do you organize it so you can actually implement the analysis? And then we have Mikko from Sellforte to talk about how the AI can take your analysis to the next level and what kind of commercial decision-making optimization potential there are. And at the end of the webinar, there will be possibility to ask questions. We try to ask as many questions in between the presentations to kind of keep the questions topical, but if we don't have time to ask all of the questions, then we'll ask them at the end of the webinar. And please do ask questions, because otherwise I'll be forced to ask questions, and I tend to have these not so maybe relevant questions for you. So utilize this opportunity. But now, Dirk, please.
Yes. So thanks, Chris, for the introduction, and I would also write, and I think just looking at the poll, the first one was related to data is siloed and topic, and I would like to actually start with also a bit of a kind of just get a bit of a feeling. What's how you judge your own marketing department in or marketing organization related to how data driven they are. Would be eager to hear that. So just to get started about Dain Studios very quickly, we are Dain stands for Data, AI, and Insight. We have studios in Berlin, Munich, and Helsinki. Around 30 people, data strategists, scientists, and engineers, and especially now the topic of how to set up a marketing organization. So we do a lot in helping companies to really kind of make the maximum use out data. And this is also a bit, yeah, you see on the right side a couple of references, and it is an important topic. And I'm just looking at the poll that yeah, a lot of companies, and that's also our experience in many of the cases, there is a clear ambition. I think you also have seen that there's a clear perception about the value of data and AI, but it is, and maybe this is more like kind of building on what Chris just said in the presentation before. It is hard, and I think here what you see, there are no shortcuts. Of course, everybody would love to see those shortcuts, and there's the eagerness of finding solutions which might help there, and obviously there is the landscape in that field is quite high, but it is a journey, and I would like to walk you through a bit kind of how we see the key elements and the criteria, and also a bit of ideas how you can get started. So what are the key elements? So a bit of a cookbook. So we call it a bit of a cookbook, and later you will see a playbook how to implement it. The first topic, which is super important, is it is kind of not a technical challenge. It requires really a holistic approach. It requires kind of that you have set an ambition level, that you also set kind of you're clear on what use cases drive your agenda, driven out of the strategy. And then, of course, the architecture, the technology, the skills and resources are critical. And obviously, not to forget, it's at the bottom line, and it seems like to be kind of quite often forgotten, is the organization and leadership and the culture. And I think especially with companies which have been successful, have kind of a long history of being in the market, the culture can be a strong asset, but it can also be quite a challenge in terms of going forward, and that needs to be considered. So whenever kind of talking about kind of setting up your marketing department, but also you could kind of relate that to the whole company, I think those elements are quite critical. And of course, everybody loves to talk about the upper part, because that's kind of more speaks about the opportunity, and it also should be the starting point, and they should drive the agenda going forward. So assuming that you have a kind of a good spin on where you want to go, especially if you're in the consumer business, I think what we see as a very helpful guiding principle is this kind of going along the customer journey. It could be also your acquisition funnel, but I think there's typically kind of a clear picture how you at least believe, and what is your hypothesis about how people interact with you, with your services, from discovering your offering all the way to using it, and of course extending the usage, and not to forget, you want to retain them, you want to grow them along that. And what you see here is kind of along the journey, you can really start to kind of cascade it down into, okay, what is your objective? What do you want to achieve? But you should also consider what you see in this blue swim lane, also what is actually your customer, the consumer want to achieve. They want, for example, have a kind of a no hassle onboarding. So obviously something like that is something to be considered, and you need to make sure that you're really able to capture that. So what the journey also highlights, and I think especially now for the marketing function, is that you need to look at holistically. The consumer doesn't care about your organization. They care about the interaction, and especially the marketing function owning also a significant part of this relationship should be the driving force of setting that up. So the journey as a structure. The second topic is, and this now just shows a bit the kind of the overall bigger process. So obviously the starting point is also, what do you know about the customer? What do you know about the market? And this could be driven by insight. It can be driven by your own data. It can be driven by external data, and they should kind of drive the business goals. They also should, of course, give you, and this is important, give you the overall agenda. Where do you want to go? And then, of course, there's these two ways, and the classical, and I think this is also what you see when we talk about, Jan was talking about, for example, marketing automation. Quite often people understand marketing automation quite a lot as a kind of a technical, as a functionality, which of course you can buy a marketing automation solution, but it is really about this kind of either kind of individual action that you really kind of do specific kind of targeting for specific kind of segments, or you really want to have this continuous way and you also want to automate that that relationship, which is of course then requires that your capability, your processes are adapting to that. So it also means you start to offer kind of a more personalized view. You start to be able to really act on specific events but quite often, and this is maybe something also to highlight, quite often it ends with this activity. But as important it is to initiate and plan the activity, as important is also to monitor your results in that sense. So and from that point of view, it is it gives you, for example, confirmation of your hypothesis, confirmation about what of the activities works. So it is a continuous process. You should consider here. This slide looks a bit complicated, but in the bottom line, it reflects it reflects the business kind of from a value tree. And this is, of course, what I said in the process before when we start about it, the business objective. Is it about, do you have an engagement problem? Do you want to kind of improve your top line, or are you forced to kind of, for example, lowering your cost perspective? And I think here what you see, and this is now an example from a telco case, for example, talking about ARPU, you try to understand what is behind kind of the ARPUs, what drives the ARPU, and it helps you cascading that down to really kind of to more like operational actions. But what it helps, and this is also something we learned in a lot of these cases, is that, of course, it's an ongoing process, and you should understand also, for example, in rolling out the KPIs, how do they relate to each other? What drives certain KPIs? And secondly, I think what we also see is now when you, for example, setting your teams in a more agile kind of mode. So if you, for example, have teams more taking care about churn, or you have teams taking care more about acquisition, it also helps them to really understand how they contribute to the overall picture, and it helps to really structure this going forward. So talking about, of course, the data part and what is the core of data-driven marketing is, of course, the data, and it starts with kind of migrating data from a data source to a data asset. And I think we have seen data silo, data quality as big hurdles. It is important to really kind of make that data kind of usable, accessible. You also have a good understanding about the quality and the completeness, for example, of the data. And one topic which, of course, you want to do is in this overcoming these silos is this: you want to have a holistic view, for example, of your customer. In that sense, that you means every interaction you have with the customer, be it purchasing, being service, being responding to marketing activities, is combined, because that means also it's a reflect kind of you are ahead and on top of the dialogue with your client, and that means you can have first of all the best understanding, which is the inside part, and of course it allows you to really start to building treatment models, utilizing this insight you have. And going a bit into this, customer 360. Here, an example from an electricity company is about. Then you have, of course, now if you're in the subscriber business, you have, for example, some kind of solid information about the quite often related to the contract, where somebody lives, some of the core credentials. But of course, you want to enrich it with data. For example, in the case of electricity company, it can be the smart meter, it can be smart home solution, it can be relation in the kind of responsive of the marketing campaigns and so on. And obviously, the ultimate goal is to also interact with the ecosystem around it. So you're not isolated in that world. That means the ultimate goal is also to have an interplay with open data. When we talk about kind of smart cities, we talk about smart manufacturing in other fields. So you want to put this data, what you have about the customer or the consumer, so B2C as well as B2C, you want to put that in relationship to, for example, other activities that a person does. And of course, it obviously also offers opportunities to collaborate with partners, which can leverage the data you have in that sense, enriching this data. Having that, of course, as a core, the opportunities how to utilize this data in terms of analytics, AI, kind of, it can be multi-dimensional. So it can be, if you're in the e-commerce area, it can be related to next best offer. You can build on similarities. You can find this kind of lookalikes. You can do segmentation of the customer. The ultimate goal at the end is also, and I think Chris also mentioned that in the recent talk, especially nowadays, it's also, of course, you want to create the maximum impact. At the same time, you need to also be careful about kind of your spending. So you, of course, you want to drive it efficiently. So whom do you kind of address with your kind of with your campaign? What channel do you kind of take? And this is something where we see more and more. It becomes the ultimate goal that you actually, instead of talking about the revenue you generate with the customer, you really want to handle the customer lifetime value. And I think this is, of course, also requires that you really are able to also measure the cost of your activities, as well as, of course, then the impact. But if you have reached that goal, of course, it is also start to be kind of a business development tool that you really can kind of assess before you launch an activity, how much you should and can spend on that. A marketing, kind of a data-driven marketing organization, of course, requires new skills, and that is of course, which goes beyond the marketing function. So of course you have on the one hand side, on the impact level, more the business process owners, the functional leader and business leader. And then you need to think about data science, data engineering, data architecture, as well as the technical platform. It doesn't mean that you need to have all these roles kind of in place, or every role symbols kind of one person. Of course, depending on the size of the company, also certain roles can be assumed by the same person. For example, when we talk about data architecture and data engineering, as an example. While the skills and the roles are super important, I think what we have seen as one of the biggest challenges actually to adapt your business process. And that's typically also, I would say, one of the biggest hurdles to overcome in really defining the roles between the different parties, and also with the ambition to do that in scale. And of course, if you come from a more traditional marketing, and it is one of the challenges to really change that. And now, kind of the first step, and this is quite important, is that you start, of course, with kind of what is the purpose of the campaign, what do you want to achieve, and then in the first step you still do it manually. You still really define, okay, the interplay of the different roles. What is the role of the marketeer? What is the role of the data scientist and data engineer? You play it through, more like you could say in slow motion. But of course, you learn also how the interplay needs to happen, and then of course you can start to automate some of these functions. So you don't kind of you start to have your scoring. That means also you automate your target groups in action. You also kind of automate the dynamic connection, the dynamic creation of the content, and so on. And that allows you to scale, and that allows you also to treat really the people at the right time with the right message via the right channel. And that is of course then how you kind of maximize the impact of it. For the sake of time, quickly jumping over, of course, to do that in scale, it has also implication in your what you need in terms of capabilities. You need to have the ability to connect this different data. We talked about the customer 360 before. And of course, building that environment, it allows to scale. It also allows to scale in terms of data. And obviously, even more important, it allows to scale in terms of the usage. The good news is that a lot of these capabilities are now can be built as platform as a service, or can be even kind of serverless, so kind of really kind of demand driven. That means also there's not this kind of ultimate kind of big investment upfront, big investment before you're even able to prove what is the impact. And then of course, as said, you build it once and then you try to build it in many ways. And of course, now talking about marketing-driven, data-driven organization means also that, yeah, it goes beyond marketing. I think those lines cannot be kind of kept in the old way. You rather need to think of how to kind of expand beyond that, because obviously you want to treat the customer with one voice, independent of the channel picked. A productized kind of data asset also means it is a journey. It also means in the beginning it might feel a bit challenging, because you might say we have realized that initial use case in a much easier way than now building up this kind of scalable data architecture. But I think what you will see is then the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth use case. That's where you get the hockey stick, where you get really kind of, first of all, it gets much easier. Secondly, it's built on the insight and the data you already have generated, and that means you start to innovate, and that of course gives you the opportunity to really drive that forward. So kind of with that kind of ambition and this potential in mind, quickly let's go into how to get there. So what is when I get a playbook? It starts with the data strategy. I think that's important. You need to be clear where you want to go, but equally important is, of course, you need to be clear where you start from. So only then you can really define your roadmap. And as you have seen before, it's a lot of moving parts. So one of the biggest topics to be discussed is also how to get there. And that means what we see as the most beneficial way to do that is this, what we call the analytical playbook, which as the picture shows, slice through the whole kind of part. And that's maybe also to highlight, this is the big difference to a pilot or a POC, because with a POC, you try to kind of shortcut quite a bit, but that also means you don't kind of build all the key, or you don't work on all the key enablers. You're kind of blending out some of them, and I think that prevents you also to learn. So in that sense, a playbook really means that you're addressing all topics from the organization, human competence, the technology part as well. Maybe not to the full blend, but it helps you to really kind of start addressing all topics which you need to build along the roadmap. And that also means a playbook, it contains clear business goals. You start to define, okay, what do you want to reach with that, in that specific case. You look into what is the relevant architecture you need to have, what is the team you need. And when we talk about the team, of course, it contains the marketeers, it contains the technical team, the data team, to make that happen, and then to deliver the roadmap, which of course then should be measured against the targets you have set. And this is of course also the core in terms of going forward, starting rather slow and small, kind of not trying to kind of address everything, but rather be in that sense kind of using a certain set of the data, leveraging one channel, but then you start to building that step by step. And that also the playbook in that sense guides you the journey, gives you the script how you start to build that step by step going forward. And yeah, as a kind of a wrap up of my presentation, also reflecting a bit of it's super important to kind of be really business goal led, kind of making sure that you understand and also the management understand there's no silver bullet, it's hard work, but at the same time also to understand, and even more than ever in the current situation, it's a key enabler for your success. It's a secret sauce you can really differentiate. To reach that goal, it's a long journey, and that's maybe jumping between number 1 and number 5 to get there. One thing is be systematic. It's not kind of it's a journey, and it's important to do it really systematically. And there, data driven is not only meaning it's the fuel of your offering. It's not the fuel only the fuel for personalization and so on, the functionality, but it also provides you structure. And with the KPIs, with the value tree shown, it helps you to really measure your progress and do that transparent. To reach the goal and to guide this journey, guide the organization and the marketing function through that journey, it is important to have a kind of the expertise. At the end, it also, of course, getting some help from the outside is good. But at the end, you should also think about, okay, what should be the core function you should have within your organization. So build this data expertise, and of course, step by step, also build the necessary environments and services and solutions needed to do that. So in that sense, as said, to wrap it up, it is a journey. I can only re-emphasize now more than ever, because more than ever it is important to be efficient. It is more than ever important also to be very adaptive to the situation, and I think that's what we also learned in the last 3 months, to start to understand week by week also how you need to adapt. And data, of course, is the fuel to reach that. Thank you. And I would hand over to Mikko then.
Maybe a couple of questions before Mikko gets. Oh, okay, here we go. Sorry.
No, please.
Well, I had in mind that is it common to actually include external data in these modelings?
Yeah, I think it is. I would say it's of course, I would say provide an important kind of opportunity, especially, for example, when you are kind of addressing a new market and so on. So your own data is, for example, not that rich. I think third party data can be kind of very helpful in formulating your ambition, and of course the ideal way is then to augment it. So I think it's a good help in the starting phase, but also over the time it helps you to really get the best. And I think also when you start to have this customer 360, you will also realize that depending on your business model and so on, areas where you're very solid because you have a lot of interaction with the customer, but you also will realize that there are certain areas where you have limited kind of exposure to the customer. You might not know what they like otherwise, what they do otherwise. And that's, of course, where third-party data can be a kind of big help to make it more kind of to work on the best treatment, to work on the tonality, to also understand how to shape the communication.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mikko. Oh, maybe one quick question from Hannele. So how much time would you estimate usually for this journey you mentioned in your presentation?
I think it's of course, you could say the first question is kind of where do you see the end in that sense? But I think you can, of course, already, for example, when we talk about this kind of the strategy part, I think it's typically around 8 weeks. Something, for example, what we do depends also a bit on the size and the complexity of the business. But then we typically also then derive out of that one also this kind of current state, and then it depends a bit, I think, with the playbook and the ambition level. But typically, I think we talk about this iterations of, for example, of first use cases in a 3-month cycle and so on. So I would say it depends a bit on also the drive and the willingness to change. But I think you can get started within, I would say, a quarter. But then it's an ongoing journey, and I would say don't be too aggressive. It really means that you change the way of working, you change the way how decisions should be done. So it will take years, but I think you will see already first implications within 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. So, and that's also important to really set these smaller goals, not to kind of spend too much time on anticipating where you want to be in 5 years. It's more important to set an ambition, of course, but then also be rather very concrete about the next couple of months.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Mikko.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and thanks for everybody coming. So what a great talk, Dirk. So that pretty much covered all the things I'm also about to say. Maybe I can go a bit more in detail, at least from my perspective. So I'm kind of head of data science team at Sellforte. So I'm not actually a marketing decision maker as such, but I'm kind of the person standing beside or behind him or her and helping the business person make marketing decisions and hopefully reaching better business outcomes. And my talk the title is quite monstrous, so it's not really a clickbait. So marketing mix modeling, promotion, effectiveness, optimizing commercial decision-making process with AI. So I will be kind of discussing our recent work. We have been thinking quite a lot how to automate this kind of commercial decision-making and how to kind of improve from some kind of base setting. And a quick intro to our company. So we are a Finnish startup. We started 2017. We are now more than 20 people. We have many industry experts already working with us, and we have lots of traction in customers from sectors. We have retailers, telco, e-commerce, and so on. And now we are expanding more to Europe as the COVID situation permits. And we developed this kind of software SaaS product that does marketing mix modeling and promotion effectiveness. So maybe a few words about this marketing mix modeling. We can also use it as an example later. So for those that are not familiar with marketing mix modeling, the main problem setting goes as follows. So here you see a figure. In the x-axis there is time. The font is a bit too small maybe, but there is 5 weeks of time points in daily resolution. The topmost figure is media investments in a couple of different newspapers, TV, digit banner, leaflets. So this might be retailer data. So there's new investments. Then the second figure is the sales. So the marketing mix modeling is all about trying to explain, like if we know the investment, we want to explain the return. So in the bottom figure, we have actually run this data through some kind of marketing mix modeling. So you can see like how much TV investments drove sales. So we can say that, okay, this week we invested on TV, let's say 100,000, and we got 500,000 euros back in sales. So we got like return on investment maybe 5 times the investment. So this is kind of simple example. We can go to much granular level if data allows. We are quite like a technical machine learning AI company, so we utilize this kind of techniques in daily basis. So we train models, we validate models, and we use them for predicting what happens. And we also use this kind of quite special Bayesian hierarchical models. That sounds quite a mouthful, but they are this kind of techniques that are pioneered by Google, Facebook, and in Finland, for instance, Smartly has been using this kind of techniques, and they are super nice for marketing use cases. And we have also started using them from early on. So we go kind of all the way to ensuring good results, even in case of lots of data and noisy data. And yeah, we can use our models for asking like, what if we change, let's say, the TV investments, or if we, instead of promoting this brand, we promote another one, what happens? So we can do this kind of time series forecasting problems quite easily, and that's kind of the gist of our product. But to go to kind of the beef of my talk, actually this would be a good time for the poll. So there is a poll. Yep, thank you for starting it. So how does your marketing decision-making process typically go? So there is a couple of different choices I would like you to answer. How do you do marketing decisions? So is it the same you always do? You trust gut feeling? You ask a friend for advice? Or you check quickly browse the report BI tools? Or you already have some kind of AI solution that does everything for you and you don't really do decision making anymore? So I think this kind of poll is quite interesting. What is the level of decision making? A bit similar maybe to the other polls, but I'm interested in this decision making. So yeah, there's already, I can see some answers. I think the D option, quickly browsing the reports and BI tools, drawing insights to support your decision, that kind of makes sense. I was expecting. Oh, and yeah, gut feeling is also gaining momentum. Yeah, those are the that's also the unfortunate case many times. But yeah, maybe we can come back to that later. So we can continue the presentation. So before we go deeper into this decision-making process, at least from one angle, let's take some distance. So kind of the marketing is kind of changing, at least in my view, and world is changing. Now there's the COVID-19 situation, and who knows kind of what's coming at the end out of marketing, how it transforms. But also one of these really big drivers driving change is data and data science. So at least I like to think that marketing has been before like a soft science. It's hard to find solid evidence. It's not based on only numbers. It also, people have also opinions, feeling, like in the poll. And it's also really complicated field. There's many stakeholders. There's the media agency that has a big kind of influence in the media planning, and then nowadays maybe in-house marketing departments have more to say as well, gaining kind of with new tools and kind of new opportunities, gaining some of that media agency kind of influence in some sense. But anyway, I like to think like marketing is becoming more like a hard science. Of course, partly like I'm helping to kind of solve this by building these solutions and kind of gaining some kind of insight that are based on hard numbers, and we can kind of explain why, how much kind of more sales driving and how many euros. But of course, on the other hand, there is always place for this kind of more softer KPIs, or let's say awareness, consideration, this kind of numbers, maybe more like long-term type of analysis, how we are, if many kind of perceive this kind of return on investment more like a short-term kind of performance measurement. Of course, we also try to measure kind of the long-term, but that's a bit tricky. But anyway, in my view, marketing has a lot of potential becoming more like a hard science, and I'm really excited about this. And you can also see this kind of change for a while now. There is like there's an overload of data dashboards and martech solutions, and I don't know, one company might have quite many different dashboards, like in-house dashboards and solutions they have purchased for like each kind of channel, or they might have like one solution for each kind of use case, even some kind of cases. So there's just a lot of dashboards. But does this really help? And does this really help at the end? So by checking this kind of CMO survey from 2020, kind of the main conclusions at least seem to be that commercial leaders are not seeing the impact from all these marketing activities. So 62% of marketing decisions made without analytics, that's quite a high number. 65% of companies cannot quantitatively connect marketing impact to business performance. Okay, that's pretty basic. I mean, how can you know if your marketing is working or not? And then a score of 3.9 out of 7 is kind of giving the marketing analytics ability to drive business performance. So kind of, if you think there is lots of tools and data being used already, lots of dashboards, lots of kind of things, good things going on, but it's maybe not fully visible, at least in this survey results. So how can we kind of fix this? At least in some sense, something might be kind of broken, and it might be something to do with kind of making better decisions that kind of give the impact based on all these marketing data and analytics. And we have devised this kind of simple framework that I'm going to present. So by the way, it's 12 o'clock, but I assume I can go a bit over time if I hurry. So this framework. So we have data and analytics. That's also kind of what we talked before. So we have data. We might have some marketing modeling as analytics, and then to reach the decisions, you kind of have to have some kind of insights about the analytics results, and maybe some kind of recommendations before you can actually kind of decide to move on them. And then, like Dirk described, tracking the impact and the decisions is super important. It's a continuous process. So maybe quick examples. So data, we typically work with sales and marketing data. We do marketing mix modeling. So one of the results is that the return on investment on TV investments could be like, let's say 5.2. Then one example insight might be that, okay, this brand X sales have increased due to successful TV campaigns. Okay, we have explained why this sales has increased. Then recommendation could be to, okay, do more TV. Makes sense, at least some level. And the decision would be to actually change the media mix accordingly. And impact tracking would be to actually check, like at constant times, what's going on. So we would like to see there is an incremental and incremental sales and margin of profit actually from this decision. So this is kind of what we would like it to be. But what is the reality is that I suppose many times, especially with these in-house cases, there is quite a lot of data and analytics, but I don't know if always people have time to kind of go through the in enough care and kind of have all the insights and think of how to change. So this may what was in the bid processes and creating the analytics playbooks. So this is probably, at least what we have seen, is kind of lacking, and there is a lot of potential. So for instance, if a company has a problem, like cannot explain why sales are slowing down, they might hire actually external consultants, and that's kind of the bread and butter of consultants, is finding insights and recommendations. But on the other hand, their kind of level of analytics might be quite low compared to some kind of software-based solutions. And also, it's quite expensive to hire consultants, and it might take 3 months for them to work on the solution. And then it's typically like a one-off project. You get the PowerPoint deck, and then you wonder after 1 year if you need to hire the consultants again, or what to do with the results, if they are applicable anymore. In insights and recommendations, at least based on software. So the logical question, of course, is can we create some kind of software or AI to kind of fix this gap? And this is kind of what we have been researching lately at Sellforte. So what kind of solution do we need here? So we also want to create impact for our customers, and we create recommendations, but it has been quite manual work. So now we have started automating it. And there are some kind of crucial findings, in my opinion. So I have been talking to analytics, like analytics managers and analytics directors in large companies, and maybe I don't know if it's surprising to you, but nobody really wants to buy an AI gives recommendations. Nobody kind of trusts that the recommendations are any good, and that's kind of understandable, because the AI is based on, well, first of all, the AI would have to be quite complicated and advanced to actually do it, to pull it off, and also there is like not everything is in data. So let's say there is lots of like organizational politics involved. Like let's say that what if the AI tells to cut half of your search investments, but what if the AI doesn't know that you are actually trying to get lots of new customers to your new web store by over-investing in search? So this could be really dangerous. So if your solution gives recommendations that are actually not necessarily kind of holistic, or they don't take everything into account, it might be dangerous in some sense. So this kind of problem. So we would have to kind of set the expectations of these kind of automated insights and recommendations in such a way that nobody kind of acts on them without checking if it's actually valid, or because there are limitations to these software systems. So if you kind of if you hire consultants and they give you recommendations, most of them, or hopefully more than half of them, are actually good recommendations, and you can kind of trust to implement them without even seeing that much evidence maybe. But of course, if you build a software system that automatically gives you recommendations, then you have to put a lot of effort in kind of validating, being transparent. It has to be kind of checked, and it's not. There is lots of information besides the training data that the AI sees, and also it's not necessarily an AI, at least in the first step. So there is lots of kind of different analytics results that you are trying to combine. You are combining data and past analytics results or other analytics results to making these insights and recommendations. So it's a bit complicated. But yeah, I would like to finish by giving some concrete tips. So I was listening. I'm also a big fan of automation. I believe that if you automate things, you can then focus on the next level. You can get higher value, higher impact, and you are not kind of stuck spending all your time, your manual work on some task, but you can all the time kind of build on top of it. So I just gave some tips. I mean, you have to have these kind of things in order before you can move to the higher and higher, and it's already quite high, that kind of hierarchy, automating decision making. So, but it's cool. It's one of those things that it's actually valuable to start trying, because anything you automate is value in the long run. But yeah, I think that's me. So sorry for going a bit over time.
It's all right. Maybe a few questions before we wrap this up. We have had the same or similar question in the chat for some time, but in many cases we might link these modelings and analysis to B2C sector, but would them work also in the B2B sector?
So I suppose we are talking about like marketing mix modeling type of exercise.
Yeah.
Yes, we have done B2B model. It's of course a bit more challenging. For instance, if you think it depends a bit, but in B2B, sometimes the time how long it takes to actually sell, it can be half a year. So then it's a bit questionable, like which of the kind of marketing activities actually influence. Was it half a year ago or now when it's actually closing? And then some of the deals might be really huge, depending a bit what kind of B2B sales. So it's also a bit questionable if these like €1 million deals actually are influenced by marketing activities. But it's doable, but there are limitations.
Okay, well, there seems to be no more questions, so I think we can maybe wrap it up here. I'll let Jan do the closing ceremony.
Ceremony, thank you. Sounds good. Thank you guys for investing your time in sharing your knowledge and your views. I think the time is. There's actually one more question to Mikko. Just came in. Which way you work usually with the SMEs? Hannele, do you want to in the chat? Maybe do you want to clarify the question a bit more? What exactly you mean or what exactly you're looking for? Let's see while Hannele is chatting or writing. I guess the question goes into the direction whether there is differences when you work with small companies versus, whether it's a partner model, or what's your model to work with when you work with SMEs.
Yeah, so good question. So traditionally, this kind of marketing mix modeling exercises are kind of limited to large companies because they are quite big projects. Of course, we want to make it as kind of automated software continuous service as possible, but there is still kind of limitations set by data, for instance. So many times smaller companies have quite bad data quality. Sorry to say that. So it takes a lot more effort. So there is some kind of let's say how much you have turnover or media spend all together. Like we have some kind of cutoff where our best kind of target customers are above that kind of point. But new exciting ways of like smaller products or partnering agencies and so on. So there are some ways that we also would like to serve smaller, medium-sized companies.
And would these usually be one-off exercises, or do you do like something like a long-term partnership?
Yes, we want to. We are of course a startup, so we have this kind of SaaS model. So it's a continuous partnership, continuous service, and it's also kind of according to what Dirk was saying and what we feel that you really want to track the kind of the impact, and you want to see the changes, how they develop, and it's not only one-off project ideally.
Yeah, makes sense. Dirk, anything to add?
No, I think it's as such. I would say the same, of course, applies for SMEs. I think the big difference is Mikko was just saying that also more like this software as a service or as a service model overall. And I think that also applies for technology. I would say compared to the past, for example, building marketing tech in the past was heavily expensive, really upfront investment, a high upfront investment, and a long road to kind of get it back. And I think this is now the big opportunity that you can really do it step by step, and really scale it along with the impact you generate. So that is also, I would say, more tailored to smaller companies. And I think we also see that while we work quite a bit with big enterprises or mid to large companies, we also work for a couple of smaller startups and so on, which obviously quite often have the opportunity that they have less legacy to overcome, mental legacy as well as technical or data legacy. And I think that is also makes it also easier. Sometimes it's very clear what to do, what should be done, but of course it's a big task to change. And that's might be something sometimes with the SMEs there can be much more focused and much more driven, and that also means it doesn't mean that it's a big cost burden to overcome.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you for as said for putting in your time into this webinar, and thank you for being a member of the German-Finnish Chamber of Commerce. And thank you guys listening. There is 9 people left here. We went a bit over time. Sorry for that. Wishing you a good midsummer break if you have one, and see you soon on any of our other events. Thanks.
Question from the chat earlier. Do we send the presentation?
Yeah. If it's okay for you guys, then we can share the presentation with the participants.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.